Hi. Um, I'm Gail Lombardino. I graduated with a commercial art degree at Missouri Western State University. Um, Shortly after graduation, I was hired by the Pold Hereford World magazine. I worked there for about 5 years when we merged in with the Hereford World magazine. I worked there for a couple of years and decided to have my first child. Uh, when I did that, I came home and thought, hey, I can work at McDonald's. I don't need I don't need anything. I just want to take care of my kid. I was home for a couple of months before Ed Bible called me and asked me uh, if I would be interested in laying out sale books from home. I thought, sure, I guess I can do this. I'm going to show my age. Internet was just starting, and it wasn't real smooth, and I had dial-up, and so I did drive back and forth with discs for quite some time. Um, but here I am, 21 years later, self-employed. I was not planned, but it has been very enjoyable. Um, Being self-employed, though, does tend to put you in a position where you don't have a team to talk to or to get ideas or bounce ideas off of. I do have a lot of the people that I do work with. I work with a wide variety of people, anywhere from the ag industry to product design to local business. Um, I do have a lot of people that send in things that they want, ideas. They pretty much know what they want, or at least they can send me in a general direction. Sometimes it'll say, get creative, be creative, and that's kind of frightening. And so when I was asked to do this workshop, I did have to think to myself, what is it that how do I get inspired? Because I don't really give it any thought, to be honest. I've done it for so long. I'm almost done it for 30 years now, which is frightening. But I had to sit back and think, what do I do when somebody sends me that piece of paper and just says, be creative. I don't care what you give me. Any color will work. What do I do? First of all, I usually go to their website. I don't have a slide for this, but because I didn't really think about it until after the fact, but I usually go to their website and I start there because I figure they've probably approved that and they're comfortable with that, or at least they liked it well enough to make it live. And so I usually start there. If nothing is inspiring there, or I don't really care for what's there, I usually move on. I tend to, as an artist, and I believe the other two presenters would probably say the same thing. As an artist, you can't help but notice everything around you. You take visual pictures all the time. I tend to take a lot of photographs of billboards and such, just because they're very creative. There's so many creative people out there. I will also, after I go to a website, I will sometimes just go looking for a photograph. So I might be on Fotolia, or I may go to Big Stock Photo, I believe is what it is, and I'll look through images. So if they've given me Western, I want it to be Western, I might go to those avenues. I might go in and look at Western pictures, and usually something there will lead me to an idea. I also sometimes will give more than one sample of the ad with more than one Western look, so that they have, they can pick and choose. I see my first slide is Instagram. Instagram is awesome. I have an account that is as just Homestead graphics. It doesn't have friends and family and all of those in there. So I find different people that, and some of them I search under, like lettering is one, the logo showcase, hashtag vintage ads. there's so many of them, and you can just search under anything, like them, and then put on there to follow I can't tell you what it's under. I didn't put it on there, but every time they post, I get the notice, and I can go and see what new things they've put up. Instagram, I love. I do it all the time. I'm not sure what the next slide is. You can go ahead and flip it if you want to, Jennifer. I don't know. Pinterest is another awesome one. Pinterest is awesome because if somebody says they want Chrome, which also leads you then to YouTube, say they want a font that looks like Chrome, there are lots of Photoshop type tutorials on there that you can click on and follow. There's one right there, the double exposure. So obviously that's not something we would use in our industry, but you could do it with a cow or a bull or any show shot, any of those different things, or even how to fold brochures. And not all of us have accounts that give us money to play with, because most everybody's on a tight budget. At least if you're working for the farmer directly, the budget is usually pretty tight. But some people will, want something different. And there's a lot of different ideas for how to fold brochures and how to design them. And the one that's off to the right on that slide, those could easily be cows or show shots or anything. It doesn't, just because it's in there looking like I don't even know what's in those pictures, it doesn't mean it can't be put into our industry. Fonts and usages of fonts, I do that as well. So Pinterest is another really good one, and you can put in any search. A lot of people are doing it for cooking and maybe their backyard or anything, but those can be used just as easily for Photoshop and brochures and type. And then the other one is books. Everybody goes to the internet today, and we forget that there are a lot of good books. Of course, I have an art degree, and so we had a lot of textbooks and a lot of books, but people tend to forget the library is a great use. Not to mention, it gets you out of your office and it lets your brain just take a break from your machine. I enjoy books a lot. These are two that I particularly have. Steal Like an Artist is a good book, and that's an interesting topic to bring up, because I do see a lot of ag ads that I do like, and I will be inspired by them. I'm not saying I don't steal their ideas, but the way they may have used a border on a picture or a background photo or something, you can use those ideas. You don't have to steal them. You don't use their background, but you can use them. These are great books. You can go to issue.com for free and look through magazines. There's art magazines. I do that as well. And there's a lot of tutorials on there as well, as far as how to do different fonts and how to make certain backgrounds. Go ahead. I think I have one more slide, don't I, sweetheart? You go ahead and move it. Yeah, billboards. I love billboards. I love album covers. Go into an old music store. Album covers are awesome. You could go on Google and search for album covers, or movie billboards, or not movie billboards, but movie the little, like the time right there, down there in the bottom left. There are so many ideas. You got to try not to think of them as being the banana smiling. There's got to be, you got to think of them in your industry, and the usage and how clever they are. They're just, anyway, that's just how I go about doing it. Another one that I, besides Google and the billboards and I think probably the biggest thing I do is talk to your client, because if you sit and talk to them for a little while, you'll find what they really want. I believe that was one of the things he said about it's in the details. If you really pay close attention, like they say, they want it to be classy and they want it to be able to be manipulated from month to month but have the same branding. You just got to look at those details and pull them out and use them in your ads. So I don't know if anybody has anything else to add, but that's pretty much how I'm inspired. that's about it, Jennifer.
Great, thank you so much. We'll move on to Brad so everybody gets some time in, and then we'll make sure you're thinking about questions for them that you can ask here at the end of the chat. Brad?
Very good, thank you. My name is Brad Alig, and I have a BS in graphic design and an art history minor from Bradley University down in Peoria, Illinois. I spent about 15 years in both corporate and agency settings and design. And then I spent most recently the last 13 years, I had my own design firm. And I can agree with the comments earlier about working on your own. It gets a little tough sometimes to get inspired if you're alone and you work with freelancers and that sort of thing. So I definitely can feel that. I went through some changes where some of my big clients were bought out by other companies. So I kind of looked at it and I said, I'd really like to be part of a team again. And I joined Filament Marketing back in October. They were actually looking for someone that was outside of the ag industry. And I'm one of, I think, 2 or 3 here at the company that does not have an ag background. They kind of wanted to look at things from a different perspective. And sometimes they felt that they were a little too close to them. So they brought me in, and I am the impact director here. Some of the ways that I get inspired, you can go on to the next slide. I find a lot of inspiration from my kids, actually. I think that kids look at things a lot differently than adults do. It seems like they're more impacted by logos, very well-known reputable logos. They're inspired and drawn to bright colors and shapes. So it kind of helps me to get out of my comfort zone a little bit, and sometimes using a safe color or something, I'll look at some of the things that my kids are drawn to and kind of try to sit back and say, why are they inspired by these things, and why are they inspired by those colors, and why are they moved to purchase those items. And a lot of times it just helps me get out of my comfort zone of doing a safe blue or a safe red. I could look at things and the bad example is neon green and black, and I think the other side has some bright blue on it as well, and kids are really gravitated towards things like that. It's got really obscure shapes, it's geometric shapes on it, so like I said, I really find a lot of inspiration from them, just to look at things differently and to force myself to look at things from a different lens. My next slide is I get a lot of inspiration from the internet. I know Gail touched on it earlier, but you literally can Google anything and you could find thousands and thousands of examples of it out there. I'm afraid for people to look at my search history on my computer, because I search some of the most random things. And then it takes you down to an image that you like, and then you click on that, and you click, view similar, and then you just go off on a tangent. And it's great for me because, you can search everything from award-winning designs to, successful ad campaigns down to just random searches. You really can just, you could search patterns, you could search textures. I mean, you name it, it's out there, and it's great because you can see great design from all over the world, not just your area. And then my next inspiration is just really opening your eyes to everything that's out there. There's so many details in things, from wood grains and patterns in wood to, the honeycomb I have there. That's just the details. A lot of people would look at that and they're like, oh, it's a beehive. And I'm looking at the geometric shapes and the patterns and the lines on the bees, and you name it. It's I'm looking at it, and people look at a baseball stadium and I'm looking at the grass and how they mowed the grass and how they got that design in the grass in the outfield, and I'm just picking up the details in everything. It's just like Gail mentioned, it's something that we can't control. In fact, probably one day last week, I was shopping with my wife, and I was standing sort of gazing into the dairy section of the store, and she came over and she looked at me and she said, what are you doing? And I said, I just love that logo. I love the way that they printed the logo onto sort of an opaque film. I just was sitting there taking it all in. I ended up taking a picture of it just because, I just couldn't resist because I thought it was so good, and someone with my wife's eyes, she walked by that 15, 20 times and, didn't even register with her. But for me, it was inspiration. So I really just, it's something I can't control. Sometimes I can go from work to home and not remember the ride home because I'm picking up so many visual things on the way home, whether they be, shapes of cars or billboards or just you name it. I'm soaking it in. So that's where I get my inspiration from. I can turn it over to Art.
Well, good morning, everyone. I am the creative director for the American Paint Horse Association. We do a lot of the marketing for them internally that goes out to the public, and we also do a couple of magazines. We used to do 3. One of them is Chrome, more of a lifestyle that goes out to our entire membership, and then Paint Horse Journal, who is basically more of a within the industry of paints, showing, performance, you name it. And we also cover websites. We have several, actually. So anyway, enough about that. I'll get started. A little bit about me. I grew up in the West Texas town of Marfa, born and raised in Alpine, in a Hereford cattle ranch just outside of Marfa and Fort Davis, up until college, and then went on to college to the University of North Texas, where I met my beautiful wife. We have 3 adult kids that have left the house, 1 high schooler still, and she enjoys art just as much as I do, if not more. But anyway, I've been in the industry for about 20 years. I started, like I said, just a little bit before I graduated. I worked for a team roping magazine in Fort Worth, and helped me get through school. Worked at a copy center on campus, and on the weekends I worked as a pen writer at a sale barn. So needless to say, I did a lot of time on a horseback, and reason why I'm telling you this is because something like that is a life experience that you have a lot of time to think about what's around you everywhere. And I was always inspired by just nature itself. And then when I moved on to college, it was just for a degree in teaching arts. And so from there, I found this whole new world of advertising and Photoshop and manipulating what I already noticed around me. And so my inspiration comes with the small details of life, kind of like what Brad was saying. You could be standing in a grocery store and notice something, and just inspiration is everywhere. I think Gail mentioned it as well. It's all around you. But anyway, enough about that. I wanted to get started with creativity. If you draw a blank screen, and I'm not talking about your computer, I'm talking about the one in your head, what is it? To me, it's trying to understand what creativity is, so that you can know how to handle that in a way. So, like everybody, we Google it. I went to Google, and Google defines creativity as the use of the imagination or original ideas, especially in the production of an artistic work. Wikipedia defines it as creativity as a phenomenon whereby something new and somehow valuable is formed, intangible. And furthermore, dictionary.com defines it as the ability to transcend traditional ideas, rules, patterns, etc., to create meaningful new ideas, forms, method, and interpretations. And I think that's what a lot of us were hired to do, something like that. But to me, what would be great is to mash up all those 3 definitions. I agree with those, but I think if we mash them up, the next slide, the creativity to me, if you mash it up, is the ability to use the imagination to transcend traditional ideas, rules, patterns, and create meaningful, valuable, tangible, and intangible artistic production. What that means is actually, so if you look at that closer, that mashup it's of all three definitions, basically picked a little bit from each one. Wouldn't you say that creativity is the ability of the mind to be resourceful? And that's basically what we do when we go online, look at magazines, talk to a peer over the phone, whatever it is. It's all feeding your imagination. This mashup, creativity is the ability to use the imagination to transcend traditional ideas, rules, patterns, and create meaningful, valuable, tangible, and intangible artistic production is actually a definition for imagination. So, in other words, to create, we must be imaginative. If you could go to the next slide, Jennifer. We must input our senses, or feed our minds, is what that means, to keep imagination and creativity just turning. It's kind of like Albert Einstein says right there, logic will get you from A to Z, but imagination will get you everywhere. So let's figure out what imagination, how we can tackle imagination. On the next slide. So let's start by recognizing what our interests are. Is it photography, typography, painting, sculpting, reading, writing? How about music? Whatever your interests are, you have to feed it. As I said earlier, or mentioned earlier by our colleagues, we really don't have much of an excuse in the digital age. Food for creativeness is everywhere. There's websites for everything: photography, typography, painting, sculpting, reading, writing, music, you name it. You can even just type a question in Google, find you an answer pretty much. Or if you actually need to see something, just go to YouTube. Next slide. Being resourceful from the moment when I wake up, it's like I mentioned, it's what your life experience is. So even from the moment that I wake up, say my prayers, I shower, get dressed, fix my coffee, go outside, feed my animals, my sensory input is already at work. Even my drive to work and an exchange with a peer walking into the building and go into my office, I have experienced a series of events that will impact my visual communication the rest of the day. And to me, that's pretty interesting. Well, can you imagine your entire life? It's collectively in there. I remember when I interview to hire graphic artists in our department, I not only look at their work, but I also look at where they come from, because that tells me a lot about that person and what's going to be coming out of them when you hand them a job. So luckily, and I'm blessed to have a great crew, right down from editorial on down to my graphic artists. I just see them come together a lot, and they make my job easy. I just have to go in there and look at the small details and tweak them. And sometimes, it's even bigger. We have to do a little bit more. But anyway, things that work for me to get past that blank screen is I create visual libraries everywhere. I mean, I use my iPhone, I use my computer, depends, which is quicker or where I'm at. On my electronic devices, I have, like Instagram. I use Pinterest. Pinterest is amazing. You can, kind of like Brad was saying, you search something, then you read up and you go. Well, Pinterest is the same way. It's just images. I mean, it's amazing. You can just click on this, click on that image, and you'll find 100 more of the similar. And to me, that's a visual library that is pretty tough to beat. On my computer, and I don't know, most of you guys probably do this already, but what I like to do is I get working on a project and I create a folder on my desktop and I just name it the project and ideas, and then I keep going back and forth to that folder throughout the whole time, and it just morphs my project into what I eventually pull out of my head just from, you know, what happened this morning and what I have in my folder. It's amazing. I already covered online, Pinterest, Dribble, Instagram. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in there. Project-specific folders, magazines. Oh, magazines. One thing that helps me is communication arts, or CA is what I call it. That thing is a pulse in the industry. You really have to get outside, like Gail was saying, is she freelances a lot, so she doesn't have, you know, the little crew like I have where we can bounce ideas. So, you know, how do you tap to that stuff that's going on around you and outside at a larger scale is magazines, online. I mean, I'm pretty sure she does that already. Secondly, I like to capture ideas. You know, I always, people make fun of me because I'm always sketching, but I always carry a pen or a pencil, and I either write on napkins or sketch on a piece of paper or the back of a label, or you name it. Or nowadays I just use my phone, take a snapshot of it, and it speaks 100 words. A picture does. And 3, get out of your comfort zone. Work on other projects outside your field every now and then. Keep a pulse in the industry. Like I mentioned, I use magazines. I talk to peers. Join a creative organization. Boy, that helps a lot too. I mean, sometimes they have amazing speakers of the month, and you go and you can live their lives just by their little speech. So I appreciate that a lot. Next slide. Some of the things that, oh, I already covered that. Sorry. But anyway, next slide, Jennifer. Sometimes the blank screen is frustrating enough to disrupt even some of the best creative minds. And there's always going to be a hang up. Don't take it personal. It just happens. Like I said, from the moment you wake up, you never know what kind of day you have. And let's face it, sometimes we all have off days, and those deadlines just don't budge. So one of the things that I do is I allow distractions to take me. That's part of it. You know, if you get called to do this, do that, go do it. Come back later, and I guarantee you'll look at it from a different perspective. Or if not, if you're still stuck on that, use some kind of ideation process. Mind mapping is unbelievable, especially when you have to start a project that's very concept oriented. Mind mapping is my go-to all the time. Mind mapping, what it does is it breaks down where you start, and it helps you find that one little detail that's going to make a huge difference. Or just bounce ideas off of someone and get unstuck. That's the biggest, my biggest advice that I would do is either have somebody that you can rely on, or just mind map your way out of it. Now, one of the things that you can do is you can get too creative with things. So mind mapping, it's like peeling an onion, layer after layer. You finally get down to the center, and that's where you really have to go. That's, if you can keep it simple, don't overthink it. Like this image up here, that was my daughter. I asked her to just think of what happens when your mind is blown and you have no direction to go, and she did really good. So that's what happens when you try to overthink it and you get too designy, where I think your visual library is working against you, where you're trying to combine way too many things and you lose sight of that very little minimal thing that actually is going to keep it together. How am I doing on time, Jennifer?
You're doing good. You're about 10:35.
Okay, so if you could go to the next slide, I'll do takeaways. What I would like for you to have as takeaway after this is to understand your creativity and imagination level, to see where you're at with that. I mean, what it all boils down to is how you accept that sensory input of driving down the highway and looking at billboards, like Gail said, and it stays in your mind or it doesn't stay in your mind. Is it really good? Not good? That's why I always carry something down to log it, keep it logged, put it in one of your visual libraries. I have idea folders all over the place. On my desktop, on my computer. In Dropbox, I have folders. I mean, I have Dropbox on my phone and on my computer. So things like that really help. Number 2, feed your creativity and imagination. And that's what I just got through talking about. Have that circle of friends. I use a lot of my old college buddies that all work for agencies or some creative way here or there. Join a group outside. You know, break your routines. Get out of the normal routine. You have to do some of that to know what you're missing or to know what you don't need. It works both ways. And number 4, stay current, stay relevant, stay true, stay current to your art industry. Know what's out there. Stay relevant. Know what's happening in your job industry, specifically in your job. You want to stay relevant. You know, nobody wants stuff that's already been done in the past. And stay true to your artistic abilities and yourself. That always goes a long while. Everybody has their unique style, and that's what I'm talking about. And also, when you have your style, when you have something like I work with Chrome and Journal, boy, you have to really take that hat off from Paint Horse Journal to walk into Chrome. They're two different things, but you have to stay true to one and the other. And that's what I'm talking about. And on the next slide, these are just tools and resources that actually work for me. Everybody's different. Your job varies from client to client. But one thing that I do say that is basic to all of us is tools. I use Creative Cloud. It is amazing. Get a subscription. You have everything there. And if you hear that, well, you know, we use Adobe Director, blah, blah, blah. You know what? Just look down on this list. There's lynda.com. You can always get tutorials online. Lynda.com is amazing. You have to pay a subscription for it, but there's a reason why you pay a subscription to it. YouTube is also great. Creative Live is amazing. I just discovered that this year. I don't know how long they've been around, but they're amazing. If you subscribe to Creative Live, you'll get these emails of, you know, a photographer or somebody doing a free little spill. They'll talk about it, and then you can purchase the rest of their live feed, and it's really cool. I use a font handler. That way, we go through hundreds of fonts. You've got to keep morphing. Every job is different, so I use a font handler. Extensis Universal Type Server is amazing. Screenfly, I don't even know why I threw that on there. It's a web thing. Whenever you're creating websites or a web page, you can just type in a URL on their website, and it'll show you different responsive screens. You can test it on an Android, iPhone, tablet, computer, laptop, you name it. Kelby One is awesome organization to join. They're tied in with the National Association of Photoshop Professionals. That's another group. Groups can be online or local in your area. One of the groups that I used to be a part of all the time, but it's gotten to where it's too far to travel now, is the Dallas Society of Visual Communications. They're amazing. They did a lot. They helped shape who I am today. You'll see a list of magazines that I use. Visual Inspiration, Creative Cloud has Beyonds, Adobe Stock. I use Creative Market. Creative Market is rich with typography, anything vector, photography. Check it out if you haven't. Pinterest, Dribble, they're the same pretty much. I love those because of their boards. I really use Pinterest like for photo shoots. I see stuff that inspire me, and I start a board just for that. Etsy, photography, Dissolve is a stock video website for stock videos. Instagram, like Gail, she's really she sounds like she's really hooked on that. And you know what? You get out there and find which one fits for you. DeviantArt is really artsy. It's a society of just different people that are really oriented in arts, and you never really know what you're going to find there. And that, to me, is what we need to be looking at. It's amazing how a lot of these have nothing to do with a paint horse, but it has everything to do with it. So anyway, professional development never ends. Keep growing, stay relevant, and stay true to yourself. So thank you.
Thanks, Art. All right. Well, we've got a question for you guys. What if you get too creative with your conservative ag industry clients? How do you sell your brilliant out-of-the-box ideas to a hog, cattle, horse, etc. client who just wants a pedigree and a picture?
To me, I would just, what is always done? Well, you always have that pedigree. I don't know if you show the bracket. Are they talking about the brackets? If they are, find a way to use minimalism. Maybe don't show the typical bracket lines. Let your text be the lines, or, just try to dumb it down. I mean, that thing is hard to get. It's hard to gild a lily. So to me, it's just keep it simple. Maybe tweak colors. There's even a website that I use a lot. I refer to it every now and then. It's the color of psychology, and it's really cool how colors impact your senses. And maybe you can just wow them with the colors. It's hard to say. Yeah.
No, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I usually try to encourage them to try something different if I feel like it's a strong enough ad to carry. I'm assuming this is more like for a publication like the Angus Journal or something, just that they'll stand out from the others. I try to encourage them to try it. Usually 9 times out of 10, they're pretty easy going. I've found that farmers are very easy to talk to and very easy to, they really want you to lead them a lot of times. And I've always found that if you just let them know that they're going to stand out amongst the others, especially if you're in a big publication, a little creativity is good. And a lot of times they'll let you do it.
Right.
That's just my 2 cents worth.
No, that's a good one, Gail. And one of the things that I use to sell them to change, and they're I don't know, for some reason, they are the clients that are very traditional and they don't like change. So I always start by showing something that's an analogy. I show them a photo, like, see this photo? And then I show them another photo that's really dressed up. And I go, which one do you like? And they'll say the one that's dressed up. Just say, that's what I want to do with your ad. Let me just, push it the next step further. And most of the time, the reason, hopefully, that we're doing something like that is to make them stand out from the rest.
Yeah, that's what they need to be told, is that you're going to look different than the guy next to you, so they'll stop at yours.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We encounter that all the time because of, horse magazine. Everybody wants to use a horse. How do you tell somebody that they can't use a horse in a horse magazine? It's tough.
No other questions, Jennifer?
I don't see any right now. Does anybody else have any questions?
Looks like we're done.
Well, you must have just wowed them with all of your brilliance. It was really great and very helpful. And I think the thing that we are hoping to do today is to be able to provide our LPC members with different ideas for how you guys draw sources to get your ideas from. And it's fun to see the similarities and also some of the differences that you guys can bring to the table because of your different backgrounds and your life experiences. I'm not sure if I'm seeing one more question. Any closing comments from any of you before we close this one out?
Jennifer, I'd like to say or add, if you really think about it, we are all in this industry. One of the things that has helped me grow out of being too stale is joining organizations like LPC and AHE. I get to watch and hear a lot of what is going on in publications in our field, and I tell you what, that has really helped me the past couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the reason why I'm involved now. So because I know it's a good thing.
Yeah.
So thank you, LPC.
Well, thank you,
Brad,
Jennifer.
Gail?
No, I just, I'm sort of new to the ag industry, so I find a lot of inspiration just from, the animals themselves and the markings and the lines and that sort of thing that I think has been overlooked by a lot of my employees, my colleagues here, just because they're so close to it. So it's a new industry for me, and it's an exciting one because I get inspired every day just by looking at some of the images and researching the breeds and that sort of thing. So it's an exciting time for me.
Great.
Awesome. Well, I will share this presentation on our LPC Facebook page here in just a little bit, and we'll also put it up on YouTube so you guys can access it at any time if you have people you would like to share this with back at your office, or if you have friends who weren't able to join us today. Again, thank you so much. We really enjoy working with you and hope to